Alright guys, I'm just doing all the measurements for the countertop or the bench top. There's not going to be any overhang on either side, so it's going to finish up right at the end of the paneling, the side panels on both sides, which works out to be 1890 from side to side. I've got a little notch out where the electrical cable's coming up there, and then I've got the sink. So what I'm doing now is I've made all the measurements from the side and the end. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make a template on cardboard with these measurements. I'm going to take it out there and see if it works. I'm not going to do the whole template for the whole piece, just mainly this section. This is the main section here, and make sure I get that right. Also, once I've got this part template right, then I'll put the tap in the template as well to make sure that's right, and then we can cut it and make sure it's right. Alright, I've cut out a section of cardboard at 600mm wide, which is the size of the bench top. Goes back about 500, but we won't need that much, but I'll just cut it that way. Now to transfer these dimensions onto here and cut it out, and we'll take it out to the bus and see how we go. Okay, so the cutout template's done. That's where the sink will be. That's little notch out will be for the electrical coming up. So let's go out and check whether it's going to work. Alright guys, this is why you make a template. Exactly, there's reason. Alright, for some reason I took the measurements. That corner's pretty right. I might just have to juggle it a little bit. And it's all right along here, but as you can see down this side there's a huge gap, whereas up this side is not so great. The sides, the actual sides look all right. This one may be a little bit out down the bottom here, so I'm gonna have to check that, but I'm gonna have to do this template again. So this is why you make a template. I'd rather do it on a piece of cardboard, get it right, before I cut the bench top and do it wrong and then have to go and buy another one. So guys, do yourself a favour. It takes a lot more time, but in the end it'll save you some money, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Alright guys, second time lucky, cut another piece of cardboard out. Now we've got gaps of the same size, well roughly 10mm on each end of the sink, so when I cut it we should have enough overlap for the sink to sit in. I've cut out the electrical pipe coming up through there. It's going to sit flush with the side of the cabinet because we've got our fridge going in here. And then the only other one I'll cut is this one here, and I'll make that template tomorrow. But I'm going to cut this end, make sure it's right. Once I'm sure it's right, then I'll cut that one. And then once we're sure, then I'll cut the end piece off. Good morning guys. Today I'm getting ready to cut the kitchen countertop. Now I'm going to use the circular saw, and I wanted to know how big the cut was, and it looks like it's about 3mm. So I've got to take that into account when I do the cutting, because that means it's going to be 3mm on either side, so that's 6mm. So I've got to take into account that. I've also going to measure from the cut to either side of the circular saw, and I'm going to put a piece of wood here and clamp it off, so I've got something to run the side of the circular saw so I get a nice straight cut. So that's what I've done there, and now I can measure it all up and get that right. I'm going to get the bench top out. As you can see, I've masked off the bench top. I've also marked out from my template where my cuts have to go. To say the least that I'm a little bit nervous of cutting it is an understatement, but in the long run, if worst comes to worst and I bugger it up, I'll have to go and buy a new piece and do it all over again. But I'm hoping my template is correct and my cutting is good. Fingers crossed. Alright, this is going to be my first cut, the hole. and then trim off the edges back to the back. Then we'll put it back in, make sure I'm right, and then we'll do this line to start off with and see how we go. Alright guys, there's my first cut, the hole saw and then the jigsaw. Now with the jigsaw, what I've done is I've bought a reverse cutting blade. So basically what it does is it cuts on the downstroke, not on the upstroke like the other blades. So any blowout will be at the bottom, which doesn't feel like there's any anyway. Oh yeah, there's a little bit, but not much. And also I used it on the slowest speed I could on the jigsaw, so just the one. And it's cut pretty well level here and nice and level here. So it was a pretty easy cut. So what I'm going to do now is take it into the bus and see how it works. First cut's done and it's worked out perfectly. I have noticed though that the bench is a tad out of square, which isn't surprising. It's not much. It's a little bit on this end. I don't know whether you can see. Yeah, you can see a little bit that's out. So I've got it flush on the corner because that's the main part. What I'm going to do is when I've made sure I've cut my holes right, I'm going to cut this part off so it's level with along here. But at the moment it's good. What I do have to check though, now that this is unsquare, I've got to make sure that my line's right up here, because I've moved it across a little touch. So I'm going to put the template back on and just make sure. If I need to, I'm going to redraw the template out and then I can cut it. So from the countertop to the outside of the bench here, which is a little bit unsquare, it's 3mm different. So what I've done is at the same place, so it's 3mm there. If I move it up just here, so 3mm there, means I'm a bit out on my measurements here, which will be 3mm out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to retrace around here to make sure it's all right, and then I can go and cut it. I've clamped a piece, I've clamped the level on here at 35mm away from the line that I'm cutting, and that should cut me right where I need to go. So if I've got it right up against the level there, it's right on the line that I need to cut on. I'm going to cut straight down through here, up a little bit either way, and at the ends I'm going to use a jigsaw. Here's my first cut. It's pretty straight, which I'm pretty impressed with. As you can see down there, the blade doesn't go all the way through before getting to the end, so the jigsaw is going to come out now. So I can jigsaw across to this line. Once I'm happy with that, then I'll do the other 3 sides and cut it out, and hopefully we've got a fitting countertop with a chopping block. Alright guys, I'm slowly getting there. It's one of those jobs you don't want to rush if you want to get it right. If you want to get it wrong, well, you can rush and you probably will. Anyway, I'm taking my time and getting the cuts nice and straight. I've done the long edges all the way to the end on either side. The short edge, I've done this end and left it connected. I'm going to do the same on this side, and then I'll use the jigsaw at the ends. I'll move it up and clamp each end so it doesn't fall out when I've done the jigsaw. Alright guys, I'm super happy. It's perfect. It's got just right amount of lip on either side. It's square. That's in properly. I do have to cut a little bit off the edge here, which you saw. I now have to cut this section and this section. So let's put that in. Look at that, beautiful. I'm very, very happy. I just got to make sure I don't stuff up any of the other parts. And then our bench top is done. Alright, I'm just putting a hole into the chopping board so we can get it out. So I've come into the middle of the chopping board and I've come back from the front about 35, well actually it's 50 mil, but I'm taking off 10 mil for the lip. So about 35 mil in. And that's where I'm going to drill a 25 mil hole. Alright, holes cut. We're now going to sand it all. So the next part I've got to do is I've got to cut the countertop flush with this end of the kitchen cabinets. As you can see, I've masked it all off. And what I'm going to do is making sure this is where it should be at the end. I'm then going to measure back underneath with a ruler, trace it onto the top here and do the same a couple of times across. Then I can join the line up and then I can cut it. Alright guys, using the template again just to mark the holes for the tap. What I've done is I lined it up to where it should be on the side. I clamped it down so it wouldn't move. I've got underneath and I've marked where I've cut out the hole where it'll sit. So then once I've marked it underneath, I measured how big the hole had to be and also the width of the outer tubing screw tie thing on, and then I marked the middle of that hole counter, which it is, and now I've got to work out where I'm putting the filtered water one. Alright guys, we have cut all the holes out for the bench top now. Tap, water filter tap. We've cut the ends off, cut out there. So that is basically the kitchen bench cut now, which is pretty exciting.